I'm Sarit Katz, Director of CAMRA's Media Response Team. I want to welcome and thank you all for joining me and my colleague Karen Becker for today's webinar. As you know, CAMRA's always monitoring and responding to media bias against Israel. But as diligent and effective as our researchers are, they simply can't be everywhere all the time. And sometimes the editors and producers are not responsive, even when they're presented with the facts. And that's where you come in. Getting many letters to the editor can prompt corrections or other actions that we would not otherwise see. Even if no changes get made, the letters to the editor page is one of the most highly read and highly clicked upon sections of any publication. So many people will read the truth. And even if letters aren't printed, the editors read them and they make an impression. And frankly, writing and battling the bias will make you feel better. And in today's talk, Karen will be walking us through the process of identifying and the sometimes subtle types of media bias. And then I'll come back to demystify the process of answering and responding to that bias. The presentations should take about 30 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. If you run your cursor at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A icon. Click there and type your questions during the program, and we will try to get to as many as we can. I apologize in advance. We probably will not be able to get to most of them. But please know we will read them, and we read everything you write, in fact, and we want to hear your thoughts, so don't be shy. And with that, it's my privilege to turn this over to our first speaker, the incredible Karen Becker, who is the Assistant Director of CAMRA's Media Response Team. Karen.
Thank you so much, Sarit, and thank you to everyone who is taking time out of their day to join us. As Sarit said, my name is Karen Becker. I'm the Assistant Director in the Media Response Team. What I do is I write and edit the alerts to our members, asking them to write to media outlets to address the most egregious instances of bias that appear in mainstream media. So first, I'm going to talk to you about how to identify the kinds of bias that we see in the media. And then, as Sarit said, I'll turn it back over to her to talk about the ways that you can help us to address it. And of course, we'll have a particular focus on the news since October 7th. Anti-Israel bias manifests in media in a number of ways, each of which I'll discuss. Omissions of important facts and context, factual errors that usually seem to go only in one direction, lack of balance, or disproportionate emphasis on one side of the story, double standards, editorializing in a news story, misleading headlines, one-sided photographs, or op-eds that all seem to express the same point of view. I'm going to start with omissions because that's my personal pet peeve. A news story can contain 100% correct, factual information, but still be extremely misleading due to omissions. It has always been common for news articles to omit that Palestinians have been offered an independent state numerous times, 1948, 2000, 2008, 2014, and 2020, and their leaders have rejected all of these offers. You will almost never see this information in the mainstream press. Since October 7th, one omission that has been particularly relevant is that in 2005, Israel completely disengaged from Gaza, removing Israeli citizens from their homes, in some cases by force. Remember that Israel sent its own soldiers to take its own citizens from their homes, and then they withdrew every soldier. The people of Gaza were left with a greenhouse agricultural business that was gifted to them and a beautiful Mediterranean coastline that could have been the basis for a thriving tourism industry. At that moment, the people of Gaza had exactly what they claimed to want: freedom. And what did they do with it? They elected Hamas. And yet we see quotes like this one. Ultimately, it's only if Palestinians have a path to freedom And they can see that ethical resistance, not what happened on October 7th, but an ethical fight for freedom is working. That's the only way, ultimately, you're going to weaken Hamas and make it an irrelevant political force. Peter Beinart said that on November 19th and on several other occasions on MSNBC. And it's ridiculous. Now, this was really more along the lines of commentary, and it was not in hard news, but no one would buy it if the information about the 2005 withdrawal was included regularly in news reports. Here's another one. This is from a news story, not an opinion story, in the Washington Post. On February 11th, 2024, the Post reported, there is no clear alternative to UNRWA in Gaza, where more than 28,000 people have been killed during the war, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. So what's missing here? 10,000 Hamas fighters dead. This is an omission that we see constantly. Even worse, in some cases, people will actually say, and the number obviously is fluctuating, but people will say 28,000 civilians have been killed, which of course is absolutely false. Hamas casualty figures intentionally obscure the distinction between civilian casualties and fighters. Also missing from this article is that the Gaza Health Ministry is controlled by Hamas, as are all the ministries in the Gaza government. Let's talk about factual errors. This is a correction that one of our researchers got. A CNN article on January 29th, 2024, bylined by no less than 5 reporters, included this error. The organization, that is UNRWA, characterizes Palestinian refugees as any persons whose normal place of residence was Palestine during the period from June 1st, 1946 to 15th of May, 1948, and who lost both home and means of livelihood as a result of the 1948 war. Those who fit that definition now number 5.9 million, made up largely of the descendants of original refugees. Now, the way they wrote this doesn't even make any sense. Here's the correction. Those who fit that definition and their descendants now number 5.9 million. This is important, especially now with UNRWA being in the news so much, because it's important for the public to understand that the vast, vast majority of people that UNRWA serves are not even actual refugees. Detecting factual errors can be difficult. You need to follow breaking events closely, reading multiple news sources. You need to know your history and keep up on many related subjects. We have a lot of information on our website about the history of Jerusalem, the Hamas Charter, Israeli efforts at peacemaking, and more. Now, in some cases, a mistake is just a mistake, and everyone makes them. But when they seem to always go in one direction, and when a news outlet makes the same mistakes over and over, this could be indicative of bias. And whether it is indicative of bias or not, it needs to be corrected. Our researchers correct dozens of errors each month. Lack of balance means focusing on one side's point of view, usually the Palestinian side, with most of the article's content given to that viewpoint and giving short shrift to the Israeli side. Sometimes they will quote one side directly while only paraphrasing the other side, and the quote ends up being more powerful and more persuasive. Another thing to be on the lookout for in terms of balance is what one of our researchers has called the pro-con-con. Journalists will quote Israelis critical of the Israeli government, and then they will quote Palestinians critical of the Israeli government, and then they will call it balanced because they quoted Israelis and they quoted Palestinians. Of course, it's very easy to find Israelis who are critical of the Israeli government, but it's not so easy to find Palestinians who are critical of the Palestinian Authority or of Hamas, because Israelis have free speech and Palestinians who live under the PA, and especially those living under Hamas, don't. One thing we have seen a lot of recently is articles that report that Israel claims, or even Israel claims but has not provided evidence, even as they take Hamas statements at face value. Now, the most egregious and really shocking example here was the reporting on the explosion that occurred in the parking lot of Al-Ali Hospital on October 17th. Hamas immediately blamed the incident on Israel, claimed the hospital had been hit directly, and exaggerated the death toll most likely by a factor of about 10. But the media immediately ran with the story. When Israel denied that it had hit the hospital, the denial was met with skepticism. Here's NPR reporting on October 19th, 2023. The Palestinian Health Ministry says around 470 people were killed in that blast. Many, if not most, were children. Israel blames an errant militant rocket, but Palestinians and the rest of the Middle East, including the governments here, say it was Israel. Palestinians and the rest of the Middle East, including the governments here? How would anyone outside of the Israelis and the Gazans in the rest of the Middle East have any idea? But the truth here to NPR seems to be a matter of democracy. But they don't question what the Palestinian Health Ministry, that is Hamas, has to say. And of course, we now know that nothing about the original story was true. Not the location of the blast, which was, again, the parking lot and not the hospital itself, not the casualty figures, and not the perpetrator. Another thing to be on the lookout for is editorializing in news pieces. One way to subtly editorialize is the use of loaded terms and emotional buzzwords such as occupied Palestinian land or just Palestinian land, or Arab East Jerusalem, or just inserting opinions in the voice of the reporter as if they're facts. Misleading headlines, meaning headlines that simply do not match the reported story. Even if the correct information is in the article itself, these are really dangerous because, especially now in the social media age, people frequently read only headlines and won't even read the article to find out if a headline is incorrect. The headline also creates an impression that will color the reader's view of the story if they do go on to read the whole thing. Now, on the left here is a headline from the New York Times. Gaza civilians under Israeli barrage are being killed at historic pace. When you read the actual article, you see that officials in the Hamas-run Gaza Strip do not separate the deaths of civilians and combatants. So they really have no idea how many civilians are being killed. Especially now we have a little bit more of an idea, but at the time of this article back in November, there was really no idea. They do tell us that researchers point to the roughly 10,000 women and children reported killed in Gaza as an approximate measure of civilian deaths in the territory. Now, here's an example again of our first problem, omissions, because they don't say that Hamas recruit child soldiers, which violates international law. So we don't actually know if these children are combatants or not. Still, the Times says, researchers say the pace of deaths reported in Gaza during the Israeli bombardment has been exceptionally high. So even though they don't know how many civilians are being killed and how many combatants, it's just too high for the New York Times. In a minute, I'm going to show you a couple of photographs. But, sometimes you will see photographs of the family of the terrorist, grieving family of the terrorist, but not of the Israeli victims. After exchanges of rocket fire, you may see photos of damage in Palestinian areas, but not Israeli areas. Photos of Palestinian children, but Israeli soldiers. Photos can be used to humanize and elicit sympathy for one side. Now, I do have to say that in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, we did see a lot of reporting in the mainstream sources with photos and videos really illustrating the horrific atrocities that were committed. It really shocked the world. And the first few days, we saw a lot of media coverage that really showed how bad it was. So I do have to give credit for that. But of course, that didn't last long. And we knew that it would not. By October 17th, the media was repeating Hamas's libels about Al-Ali Hospital. So take a look at these two photographs. This is two photographs of the same car that was part of the World Central Kitchen convoy that was accidentally hit on April 1st. Do you see what's different about them? One has the sign that says World Central Kitchen, the other does not. You can see the logo clearly. Now, which one do you think was taken first? Metadata showed that the one without the sign on it was taken first. So you can make your own inferences about what happened there. Okay, now look at this one. These signs were just obviously placed here. This is just not a normal place on a car where you would have two signs like this. Plus, they're the only things on the car that were not damaged, that were not destroyed, excuse me. Look at op-eds. Are they balanced over time, giving voice to all sides of the issue, or do they predominantly give voice to a single point of view? Are op-eds permitted to make unsubstantiated claims? Even in an op-ed, factual claims must be substantiated. If op-eds include factual errors, do they correct them? This was a really egregious claim that was made in an op-ed in the LA Times that they never corrected. On one occasion, a handful of children, all about ages 5 to 8, were carried to the emergency room by their parents. All had single sniper shots to the head. These families were returning to their homes in Khan Yunis, about 2.5 miles away from the hospital, after Israeli tanks had withdrawn, but the snipers apparently stayed behind. None of these children survived. Now, even the doctor who made the claim did not say that he even saw the shooting. All he saw was that kids had been shot. He had no idea who shot them. They could have been shot by Hamas. I would say it's more likely that they were shot by Hamas. He had no idea, but he was permitted to make this claim in print. So these are the kinds of things to be on the lookout for. This brings us to the next topic. What can you do about media bias? And I'll turn it back over to Sarit.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks very much. And I am going to share my screen if possible. So bear with me, folks. Let's see how this works. How's that? Okay, very good. So you've seen the bias now. I'm sure you understood it before, but it is very, very, very subtle sometimes, especially with omissions. So now, how are you going to answer? First of all, don't be nervous. Okay. Good things come in small packages. It's not complicated. You don't have to write a term paper. Just be very concise. Make one point. You don't have to, pull out every piece of wrong information or put in everything that's omitted. Just make one point. The whole letter to the editor can be as short as 3 sentences if you like, because anyway, their typical limit is 150 to 200 words. And you can find their emails. Reporters' emails typically are at the end of an article. Possibly it'll have their email. You can also Google it. Letter to the editor's email, like letters at New York Times or whatever, that's usually can be found on the opinion page. Sometimes they have contact forms online. And if you're getting our alerts, then you'll get all the information. You'll get all of the various emails that we want you to send your emails to. Now, in terms of the actual letter writing, it's really easy as ABC. Answer, bridge, and close. Answer, refute the error. Okay, so choose the main point that you want to address, include the headline and the writer's name in the subject line and in the beginning of the email. It might get cut out when it's printed, and just start with the main point and refute it. So for example, in George Smith's op-ed on April 6th, Israeli policies hurt Palestinians, the writer incorrectly claims that Israel practices apartheid. This is false. So you see, very simple, just refute it. And then lay out your evidence. So Arab citizens of Israel have the right to vote, freedom of speech and religion. Arabs serve in the Knesset and the Supreme Court and have access to the best medical centers in the world. Okay, apartheid is a system of racial segregation where one racial group does not have the same political, legal, and economic rights as others. In fact, it's against the law in Israel to discriminate. Okay, that might be a little even too wordy. Just give your evidence that supports the point, and then transition. And this is the best part. This is the bridge. Answer, bridge. Add a sentence bridging and a twist to an interesting argument, which is the point you want to make. So, for example, the truth is that Israel's Arab neighbors practice religious and gender apartheid without any political or media condemnation. See that? You twisted it. Some of useful transitions are the truth is, which we just used. Instead, you should ask, the real issue is, the same cannot be said for. On the other hand, see, then you're transitioning to make another point. And here you can tie it with a bow. This is C, to close. So you're wrapping up the letter with your point. For example, in this case, women, LGBTQ, and religious minorities are systematically oppressed everywhere in the Middle East, except for Israel. Maybe you should report on that. So that's it, ABC, very, very simple. Now, of course, many people are getting their news from social media, and this is a very important way to reach people. So what I recommend you do is post your letters on Facebook, even if they're not published. If you're on Facebook, then the people on Facebook who follow you and are your Facebook friends, maybe they are in your golf foursome, or you play cards together, or you ride bikes together, or you went to college together. These are your, these people already feel kinship to you. So this way, many of them may not know or care as much about Israel as you do. You'll be able to inform them through Facebook, and then they will be able to inform other people. And they're already, predisposed to like you and listen to you. So if you post your letter on Facebook, then you can take the link, the time code from Facebook, and then post that to X, which used to be called Twitter. And if you're verified, which I personally am not, then you can actually post the whole letter, because you can post longer tweets, or what they call posts now, if you are verified. And then you can also have screenshots from your phone and post them on Instagram. And these are sort of the major places. I mean, I don't know if you're going to make TikTok videos, but Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are very popular. And I recommend, if you're on any of these sites, and you're already using them, then this is a great way to amplify. And you can even, with the handle, you can tag the media outlet as well with their tag. And that's really it. It really wasn't hard. It's very, very simple. We can, I know I was checking in the Q&A before about sending the PowerPoints. We'll certainly be able to send out this one. We'll have to talk about the other one, but this one for sure is fine, and we'll be able to send it out so you'll have the notes. But it's really very simple. Answer, bridge, and close. And now Karen and I are going to take questions. So I am ceasing to share my screen. And we have, I think, a few questions already, in the queue. So Karen, take it away.
The first question, Sarit, is, can you debunk some common libels, such as genocide, or that there is a famine going on now in Gaza?
Okay, absolutely. So, of course, the genocide is a ridiculous argument, even as we know that one of the things that they claim is there are 6 million of these refugees. So what kind of genocide is that, when Israel has been you know, if Israel is either the most idiotic genociders, completely ineffective genociders on the face of the earth, or else they're not committing a genocide. And then you might get the ethnic cleansing, libel also. But again, here's where I would twist and say the people who've been ethnically cleansed are the Jews from Arab countries. Now, with the famine, again, there's more aid going into Gaza now than went in before the war. And there was, again, they're saying it was an open air prison, but now they used to say it was an open air prison. Now they say it was great before and it's terrible now. So they have to, pick one. But again, there's more aid going in now. The problem really is the distribution, and that's because Hamas is hijacking all the aid. And then again, the twist in your answers is the people who are starving in Gaza are the hostages. So why don't they talk about that? Talk about the hostages. So again, you want to answer, but you really want to twist and make it your own point. And other thoughts, Karen?
Just in terms of ethnic cleansing, I mean, also Jews were ethnically cleansed from Gaza, right?
Exactly. Great point.
We get this a lot. Why don't you use form letters to make it easier for people to respond to the media?
Yes. So form letters are great and they have their place. And in fact, some of our alerts have been turned into form letters by other people and other organizations, which is fine. However, if you want to get a letter published, it has to be an original letter. And form letters can be dismissed. They're useful to outlets who are either really not responsive no matter what, we don't already have a relationship with, or that don't publish letters to the editor. But it's much more effective if we can get letters printed. And we have a very high success rate because you, our camera members, are really knowledgeable and you write great letters. And so when you see a letter to the editor that's printed and it's a pro-Israel letter, it's very likely that it's a camera member's letter. Very, very often you all get your letters printed, very high rate. So thank you for that. And those letters then are read and they influence all the other people who are reading the letters to the editor page. So that's why it's more effective in many cases to write original letters, even if there are fewer of them. And as I said, it's not hard. It's like a few sentences. And even if you don't write as many sentences as were in the example, that's okay too. Even if you just say what was wrong with it, without twisting it and making your own point, that's okay too. So just don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good when writing a letter to the editor. Just write it. Just write it and send it. And give yourself 15 minutes. Just say dash something off. Don't give yourself a very high barrier of how perfect it needs to be. It doesn't.
And I just want to add, even in cases where the media outlet is not publishing the letters, editors will just take much more seriously a much smaller number of individually written letters because they see that you took the time to write this yourself. You thought about it yourself. This is your own opinion. And even when we write to outlets that don't publish, a smaller number of individually written letters is just taken much more seriously by editors compared with form letters.
Absolutely true.
I'm going to combine a couple of questions here that we have about the New York Times. Anti-Israel writing in all sections of the New York Times, not just the opinions section.
Yep.
It's in the business section, it's in the book review, it's in the magazine section.
Food.
I'm just
food
adding the
sections?
food section. I
Oh,
remember the ones
absolutely.
in the text section, that style section.
Constantly.
The question is, should our members inform us when they see something? I would say yes, even though we do monitor the New York Times, but especially if it's in one of those other sections, yes, please do. Is it worth your time to respond to them if you see them? Absolutely, definitely. And the other question about the New York Times, that they are no longer putting the source of their information for the number of Gaza casualties. Now they're just saying Israel killed 33,000 Gazans so far without even attributing it, which
So talk about an omission. The Gaza Health Ministry, which really is just another name for a propaganda outlet, actually revised their numbers down. They actually noted that 11,000 of those were, didn't have documentation for. So anybody who's still citing 33,000 is omitting the fact that that number has now been, even by the Gaza Health Ministry, which couldn't be trusted to begin with, has revised their numbers and say that 11,000 of those they don't really have documentation for. So that means that these are questions that have to be asked of the New York Times and anywhere else you see it. And I think that we ask you, whenever you see anything, to do both of those things, to both let us know. We may already, our researchers are already monitoring, but as I said before, can't be everywhere all the time and see everything. And you are, in addition to our army of letter writers, you're also our eyes and ears. So you are also, monitoring many more media outlets than we can be. So please do let us know. And you can go to our website, camera.org, and contact us. And you'll be able to report things like that or send it to tips@camera.org. And then also write your own letters. Don't wait for us. Write your own letters. As I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be a term paper. A few sentences is better than 0 sentences. So go ahead and write letters to the editor anyway, and find the reporters as well.
Okay. This question, I'm a strong supporter of camera. Thank you very much. However, it is by nature only reactive. What has become obvious is that we also need a proactive effort that encourages young writers and reporters who are supportive and unbiased. We have that. We have that. We have our camera on campus. We have our camera fellows. Our campus department is doing amazing work developing these young writers. They're writing op-eds in their school papers. They're trying to write external op-eds. And we definitely are doing that.
We've been doing it for 15 years. So we should be there. We have alums who are out there and they're working and they're writing, they're at think tanks, they're at media outlets. So we're getting there. But as noted, the other side's been doing it for decades. And they've gotten their people in at colleges as now they're the professors. So it is pernicious. And also keep in mind that there are fewer of us. Okay, there are only a few, there's a small number of Jews. And while we have, thankfully, non-Jewish allies, it's still a smaller number. The vast majority of people just don't know that much or don't care that much, or it's not really visceral to them like it is for us and for our allies. So the other side is very, very vocal and loud, and we need to be as vocal and loud, even though there are fewer of us. And we're all trying to target the middle, the people who don't know that much and are persuadable. So that's why I also encourage you to get out there on your own social media and as well as, of course, writing letters to the editor.
This question is from someone who spends time on X and Facebook. How do I properly reply to obvious propaganda? As an example, like if you believe that Israel is a terrorist country. First, I want to say, before getting to how to respond to the obvious propaganda, I want to say, if you are on X, try to become a community notes contributor. You do not have to have a verified account to become a community notes contributor. And the way that you do it is you'll apply to become a community notes contributor. And then it will, after you apply, it will ask you to rate published notes. And after you have been rating published notes for some period of time, it may take a while. You have to rate the published notes. Then it's like a video game. It will put you to the next level where you get to rate unpublished notes. And then you can help to determine which notes get published and which notes do not get published. And you have to it's like a video game. You have to get a certain score where you recommended a note to be published and it was, and your score goes up. Or you recommended a note to be rejected and it was, and your score goes up. And once you get a certain score of that, then you get to a point where you actually can write community notes. So if you can actually start writing community notes, then you can really respond directly on something like that. And even if you can't get to actually write community notes, it's important to be able to rate the unpublished ones, and so which ones will get published and which ones will not. So that is one way, if you have the time and you can be diligent about it, to be responding to propaganda on X. And in terms of a substantive response, I mean, I don't think there's a substantive response to, like, if you believe that Israel is a terrorist country. I don't know.
No, but
they're so outlandish.
Right. I mean, so first of all, these people are what's called clout chasers. They're grifters. They're just looking for clicks. So,
and some of the accounts are monetized now.
Yeah.
So they're making money off of that.
So, when you engage with those, sometimes you're actually helping them. But what I would do is not, quote tweet it or quote post it, but you can screenshot it and then quote screenshot, put
your comment on the screenshot,
not on the post itself. So you don't give them any engagement. You just screenshot it, and then you can post. And then what I would do is also include in your own tweet. I'm just going to say tweet, even though it's now called a post.
Yeah.
In your own tweet, I would also include a link to a good article, or a good op-ed piece, so that people can see those, and those get more clicks, and those get, more, engagement. So I would click. That's how I would do it.
I mean, Israel is a terrorist country is just such an outlandish statement. But I mean, there are plenty of other things on X or Twitter that you might want to respond to that are propaganda. Like, for example, one thing that I mentioned was the photos of these emaciated kids that were circulating on Twitter. But then if you zoomed out, you saw that the mom was totally healthy. So it was obvious that this was a child who had a medical condition.
If they're even in Gaza. So they're also using many pictures that are just scoured off the internet that aren't even in Gaza. A lot of these are fakes. They're just, they're taking on, forgetting about AI, not even going there. They're just taking old pictures from Syria. So many of them aren't even from Gaza. They're not, and the ones that are staged, like those, World Central Kitchen signs, that are placed there. You'll often see, total rubble and then a teddy bear, a total,
and
you know, these are
Right.
kind of
Everything was
staged
destroyed
pictures.
except for the teddy bear.
Teddy bear, just cute red teddy bear, you know, and these things are, you know, they're completely obviously staged. And you can note that the totally staged picture, because of course a teddy bear on rubble is going to, you know, pull at your heartstrings. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and the other side knows that. So, you know, these things are, but at least if you know it and you can speak the truth and you can say it and you can express it, then you will feel better. This is really, really important. We're all under so much stress and pressure right now because of what's going on, and we're feeling it, and it's so traumatic, but you will feel better if you are doing something. Like, we're not going down, you know, and if we do go down, we're going down swinging. We're just going down swinging. We're, you know, going to do something about it. And we're going to land a bunch of our punches. And we do. Camera's actually very effective. I know there was a question in there before about, are we monitoring the letters and which ones get published and do they get published and things like that. Yes, when you write a letter to the editor, we ask you to blind copy us, BCC, blind copy, or send the email and then forward it to us. And the email address for that is letters@camera.org. So letters, like writing letters, @camera.org. So, and we read them all. We read all your letters that you copy us on, and we respond to them. We tally them. We make sure, you know, we keep track of the numbers. And if you get published, also let us know. And the letters are so good, and going in and reading your letters to the editor is really, it just makes us feel better, because we're not in it alone. And I'm always blown away by the letters that our members write. It's incredible. And the published ones, we several times a year will do a published letter alert, which is sharing some of, just a fraction of the many, 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 many letters that our letter writers get published. It's really amazing. So yes, we're on it. We're interacting with our letter writers from the letters@camera.org mailbox. So please, in fact, make sure to blind copy us or forward your letters to us, letters@camera.org. And we appreciate that.
And I just want to add, I want to go back to the issue of the images and how you were saying some of them come from Syria or other places. If you're really tech savvy, you can do a reverse image search. You can go to tineye.com. I believe it's tineye.com, and maybe tineye.org. If you put in Google TinEye, you can screenshot the image and you can upload it, and you can do a reverse image search to find out where it came from if you really want to be tech savvy about it.
I think Google Images also you can search with an image.
Let's see. If you're not sure, how can you tell if an article or opinion piece is anti-Semitic?
Well, if you're not sure if it's anti-Semitic or not, go to the next article, because you will definitely come across one that's anti-Semitic. But in terms of identifying anti-Semitism, we recommend the IHRA definition, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition. You can Google that. It's IHRA. Some of the examples that they give in the IHRA definition are things like, you know, accusing Israel of, you know, perpetrating acts like the Nazis did. There are various types of things. Those are anti-Semitic. But for sure, there is enough to respond to that, you know, you'll come across something that's anti-Semitic sooner or later. But again, just because it's even if it's not anti-Semitic doesn't mean it doesn't require a response. If it is inaccurate, if it is biased, if it is omitting important facts and context. Omission of important facts can change the entire story. So, when I give talks, I talk about how it could be, like that Sarit Katz, or in this case, Sarit Katz is driving to the store. The car goes up on the sidewalk, plows into a group of pedestrians, and 3 people are killed. Now I sound like a car ramming terrorist. But Sarit Katz is driving to the store, has a heart attack, loses control of the car drives up on the sidewalk, plows into a group of pedestrians, and 3 people are killed. Now that story, same story, all the facts in the first version were correct, but in the second version, you understand that it's a tragic accident and I'm not a terrorist. So this is why omissions are so pernicious, because they can completely change everybody's understanding of the story. So omission of all the evacuation from Gaza, but omission of all the offers of statehood, omission of the fact that Egypt has a border with Gaza. These are things that, completely change a person's understanding of what the situation is. Of all the rockets that have come in since 2006 from Gaza, all the rockets and missiles, all the other terrorist attacks, all those omissions completely change it. As if, October 7th, they say October 7th didn't happen in a vacuum. No kidding. So these omissions change everybody's understanding. These facts, we know these facts, but 90% of people out there don't know these facts. 90 at least, probably more.
This is a great question. How do you, a camera, deal with your own anger at seeing all of this disinformation promulgated by respectable news organizations? We just channel it into our work. We just channel it. We're all so motivated, just by what we see. We just channel it. Sarita.
And I think you'll feel the same way when you are actually writing letters to the editor and posting on social media about it. And by the way, you'll get a lot of positive responses. I want you to understand, you will get a lot of love from your friends as well. Of course, we are all in touch with each other. And so I also recommend that you form letter writing groups with your friends, share stories, and share the email address that your friend should write to. Like, if you have a WhatsApp group or a text chat, share these stories and share and say, hey, let's all write to, letter to the editor too. And you can do this in your local papers, in your Jewish papers, because they're very likely to publish you. And that is very gratifying and will make you feel like you're making a difference, and you are. And also talking to people in real life about it will also make you feel better. Even strangers. So I'll just give an example. I was in the doctor's office and I was reading a Time magazine, which, nobody looks at Time magazine anymore. That's why it's only in the doctor's office. But nonetheless, it was a famous one. It was the Time magazine cover story, which was a Magen David with a daisy chain. And it says, why Israel doesn't care about peace. This was before October 7th. This was a number of years ago already. And I'm sitting there reading the Time magazine, in front of my face in the waiting room. And I hear somebody say, isn't that terrible? And I wasn't really sure what they were referring to. I just heard a voice. So, maybe it was like they have a 45-minute wait. So that's terrible. But I wasn't sure. So I kind of lower it and I see that a woman is looking at me and I said, excuse me. And she said, oh, it's terrible that Israel doesn't care about peace, and indicating the cover of the magazine. And I said, well, this is not at all true. Israel cares very much about peace. Every teenager at the age of 18, boys and girls, go to the army in Israel. And nobody cares more about peace than the parents of soldiers. And so this woman that I didn't know said, huh, I didn't know that. Thank you. So you can make that kind of difference. And then she'll be able to tell, I don't know, her coworkers, her friends, etc. So those are the kinds of things that we really recommend you do. Don't be shy.
How do you find contact information for television programs? In most cases, you won't find an email address for a television program. Some stations will have a contact form on their website. Usually, if you go to a media outlet's website, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and then you'll see contact us, and sometimes there's a form. But the best thing to do if you see something on TV is to tweet them. That's because then you're making your criticism public, and they really don't like that. So that's the best way to deal with television programs. Would you notify us if one of our letters gets published? Actually, the media outlet will notify you if one of your letters gets published, and then you'll notify us, actually. Let's see. Are letters to the editor that are printed shared on news websites? It depends on the publication. There are some that actually only print letters to the editor and don't publish them online for whatever reason. I don't understand why. But it varies based on publications. I think most of the time, if they publish it, it'll be online. Why don't we take one last question? How important is it for someone like me to get involved?
Incredibly important. The most important. I don't know. I think that, we need every voice. As I said before, there aren't that many of us. Even with our allies, there aren't that many of us. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are with us who are not vocal about it and are not engaging the media. So every single voice matters, everyone. And it's very important that you don't just tell us, okay, here it is, go do your job. Yes, it is our job. We're happy to do it. It's our mission. It's more than a job. It's an avocation. It is a mission, and we appreciate it. And it's an honor. But in addition, we need you to also act and multiply our efforts and be force multipliers. And this is just, I can't express enough how important it is. And how the main thing that is probably holding you back is you thinking, well, I don't know enough. It's not, what do I, no, you know enough. Whatever you know is enough. And if you want to learn more, you should definitely go to our website at camera.org. You should take a look there. If you're not on our list, you should get on our list. You can write an email, and I'll actually let you know again when I conclude, but to letters@camera.org so that you can get our alerts. But on top of that, go to the website. You'll get, if you're on the list, you'll get a weekly newsletter. So we don't overwhelm you with emails, but go to the website frequently, take a look, see what's happening. There's so much valuable information there, and you will become totally informed. And again, just don't be put off. You see how inaccurate the media is? Like, you're probably more accurate than them. So there's no reason for you to be in any way intimidated. They're constantly, making mistakes, and, at least you're trying. So don't be intimidated at all. And, I don't think there's any reason to say, you can't do it. You can totally do it, and also practice.
And I want to add that the ADL estimates that there are over 1 billion people in the world holding anti-Semitic attitudes, and there are about 15 million of us Jews. But although we are a minority, it's important to remember that we're not such a small minority that we can't affect positive change. There are enough of us to shift the discourse if a substantial number of us speak up. And as Sarit said, every voice counts.
I guess we're pretty much out of time. Maybe we can squeeze in one more question, Karen, do you think?
Let me see. There's just so many now that it is. Where do you suggest sending corrections instead of letters to the editor? That's a good one. If you have a request for a straightforward correction.
Well, first of all, alert us, but also letters to the editor as well. And you can also send it to the editors of the paper. So send it to multiple. I mean, don't send it to us in the same email that you're sending it to, go to our website and contact Camera, but also get, you can usually find, if you Google, there may be the emails of the editors of the section, like the foreign desk editor. It depends on the outlet, even the editor-in-chief. If you can find any editor's email, that would be appropriate. The managing editor, the editor-in-chief, if it's the foreign desk, depending on where it is, the news editor, breaking news editor, things like that. But you can also CC the letters to the editor email. Just make sure to get it out there.
As I'm scrolling, I see one question that 2 people basically had the same question, and I think the answer is pretty short, so I'm just going to jump in with that one last one. Okay. About getting op-eds accepted. If you write op-eds, can you get them accepted? Just be persistent. Be persistent. Yes, you can get op-eds accepted, but be persistent. Try in your local publications. You're more likely to have success in your local publications. It is extremely difficult to get an op-ed published, in something like the New York Times. But if you have a local media outlet, just be persistent, keep submitting. And
the Jewish press. The Jewish press. Yes. Very important. Your local Jewish paper. A lot of them aren't that great. And a lot of people still read them. So make sure, try to get your voice in there. Just make sure you're writing to their guidelines. Don't write a 1,200 word piece if they're publishing 600 word pieces, that kind of thing, 800 words. Usually the sweet spot, something like 800 words, but every place has a little bit different. And that
goes for letters to the editors too. Make sure you look up what their parameters are, because most of them will have word limits. So make sure you know what they're looking for.
Right. But typically, as I said, 150 to 200 words, you should be good. 200, 250 even. But, if you write a very long letter, they may just take a paragraph of it, and maybe it's not the one that you really wanted them to include. So if it's a shorter letter to the editor, you have a better chance of getting the point you really wanted made. So that's one of the other reasons I say don't address every single thing in an article that bothers you. Address one, and then tell your friends to address all the other things. And that's why, again, I recommend, starting a chat, a chat group, a WhatsApp group, a Telegram group, whatever you're using, and circulate problematic articles and the email addresses that people should be sending them to, and start that, going, and then your friends can be picking up your slack and you can pick up theirs. So I guess, unfortunately, that means our time is up. So my apologies to everyone whose questions we could not get to. Thanks especially to Karen for joining me in this discussion, and for everything that Karen does, because truly, she is amazing. And again, I want to thank all of you for joining us and remind you to sign up for our alerts. If you're already a member, please invite one or two of your trusted friends to also join. And they can sign up, or if you're not a member, you can sign up by emailing us at letters@camera.org. And we'll get everybody quickly signed up to receive the alerts and action items, and which is a powerful way for you to help combat media disinformation. And just note somewhere that you were on the webinar so letters@camera.org, and then just, sign me up. I was in the webinar, something like that. And so we need you to join, because the bigger we are, the more impact we can have. So please join and get others to join as well. And again, you can read all of Camera's research at www.camera.org, which, as I said, has a ton of important information. And I also want to say that if you like what you heard today, or if you feel that Camera in general provides a needed voice in current discussions and debates about Israel and Jews, then I would hope that you will consider making a donation to Camera. Just go to the camera.org website, and you'll see a big red button where you can make a gift, and we would very much appreciate it. And also, let me invite you to this webinar tomorrow, a webinar on Iran. And there'll be an invitation following this webinar. You'll get it in the email if you're on our list again. And it's at 1 o'clock tomorrow. And we're speaking with IDF Colonel Reserves, Dr. Eran Lerman, who's the Vice President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And it's about what's going on. That's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And in any case, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And wishing you a good day, and Chag Sameach, Chazis and Pesach, and this concludes the program. Thank you. Thanks very much.